let's get to the next one. We're going to talk about everyone's favorite topic, ESG. Hopefully we can go through E, S, and the G part of it. Joining on the stage is my colleague, Eliza Gkritsi, and I'm going to get the names properly. Daniel Hwang from F2 Pool, Harry Sudock from GRIID, and Fred Thiel, CEO of Marathon.
Okay, hello everyone. This is really bright. Is everyone else feeling how bright this is? No? Okay.
Can't see anyone.
So thank you, Arian, for a wonderful introduction. I think you pretty much said everything there is to be said. So thank you everyone for being here today. And I would like to start with just a quick round of questions, because this is a very heated topic and we can maybe set some facts. So if you can keep this in opinions maybe, yes or no, I would really appreciate it. So, do we think that climate change is real?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
That took you a while, Harry. Do we think it is an option at all to reduce the energy consumption of Bitcoin mining?
No.
That was a quick one.
It's hard to do a yes or no without explanation.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so I think every day we're increasing the energy efficiency of Bitcoin mining. The latest generation Bitmain S19 XPs are 30% more efficient than the prior generation S19, which is 4 times more efficient than the S9, et cetera. So we are getting better and better at it. And I think as more and more Bitcoin mining gets sited behind the meter at power generation, you get more and more energy efficient. So yes.
Yeah, I think he answered it pretty well.
But the overall trend is that the energy consumption is going up.
But that's the wrong framing, right? Like, not every unit of energy is created equal, and the value that Bitcoin mining is able to deliver to this economic center of mass that is Bitcoin is enormously valuable and useful. And so, it's like saying, I don't want to, eat clean and feed my body. I just need to do less. We just need to do less. Like, it's nonsense, right? If we want to live within the context of an emerging industry that's delivering enormous good to individuals all over the planet, the security model of that system needs to grow over time as the utility and the usage grows over time. And the type of power that's made available to miners that we're engaging with is also incredibly positive sum.
Mm-hmm. So we think that the energy consumption is integral to the security of the network, and therefore it's not necessarily desirable for it to be reduced.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So my next question is, would we agree that a climate positive direction for the industry and for the world in general is to use less fossil fuels?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I think we have all that sorted out. So one thing that's been discussed lately quite a lot is whether mining can actually be a resource to grids, whether mining can help the world transition to a cleaner energy mix. And I want to ask Harry, who works in this quite a lot, to run through the argument of how this could work.
Yeah, I think the important piece to understand around this is really around how do energy grids function, and so how do we understand the Bitcoin mine within the context of the broader system that it exists within. So in any basic energy system, you've got generation, transmission, and delivery. Those are the 3 players within an energy grid. And generation is the turbine or the solar panel or the nuclear plant. The transmission are the high voltage lines that can move power up to 500 miles. And then delivery is the spider web of substations and lower voltage delivery lines that bring power to your house or into your ASIC potentially. So, that's the grid environment overall. And historically, until the invention of proof of work at scale, the ability for an energy consumer to be interruptible was very limited. So if you look at a big, let's just think of a big energy customer of times historically, an auto manufacturer, an aluminum smelter, heavy industry. Those customers do not have an ability to curtail their energy consumption in a dynamic fashion because the energy bill represents a much smaller percentage of their cost of goods sold than it does for a miner. So for a miner, the more efficient we are, the higher a percentage of our monthly expenses our power bill is. For an auto manufacturer, you've got a huge amount of labor, you've got a huge amount of parts and inventory and all the different components that go into the assembly line, and the power might make up 25 or 30% of that income statement. So the Bitcoin mining grid participant is a fundamental innovation in what kind of customer is available to an energy market. And so the ability to introduce interruptibility in that dynamic fashion has never been seen before. And so the opportunities for us to structure new kinds of power purchase agreements, new types of behind the meter, in front of the meter types of relationships with power providers unlocks a new level of resiliency, a new level of environmental sustainability, and a new level of price stability for other customers within these broader systems, all of which end up delivering value to the systems that we operate within.
I think even when we were doing like our mock, right, we were talking specifically in Texas, right, what you're saying, energy smoothing or like energy price smoothing. And it's just like energy load balancing during times of like, it's very hot, everyone has their AC on, but when everyone doesn't have their AC on, like Bitcoin miners and farms can kind of be that like buyer of last resort. And so at the end of the day, with what you're saying, right, the people who are buying this electricity, who are not even in the Bitcoin mining industry, are benefiting.
Yeah, it acts as a big capacitor essentially, right? So you can't shut down a car assembly plant, you can't shut down a food processor, you can't shut down any process industry midstream because equipment seizes up, you have to clean it out, etc. Bitcoin miners can be shut down in under 30 minutes and can be brought back up in roughly the same time. Energy in this country really is used peak 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. And so the grid and the power generators have to generate enough electricity to support that peak, but the rest of the day, those resources sit considerably idle. And especially when it comes to renewable energy, nuclear energy is the base load for the grid. Then comes coal, because those two energy sources you can't regulate up and down during the course of a day. Then you have these peaker plants, or shaver plants as they're called, which are natural gas-fired plants that then provide the next buffer. And last of all is solar and wind. And so what happens is, other than the 4 to 9 p.m. period of time, very little solar and wind actually is used by the grid, and so it sits idle. We deploy our miners behind the meter at renewable energy facilities so that we can use that energy when it's not going to the grid. And if and when the grid needs it, we can curtail 30 minutes. And then when the grid's done with the energy and we can use it again, we can provide it. There is no other incentive for a renewable energy provider providing wind or solar to keep investing and growing their capacity if they can only sell 25 or 30% of the electricity they generate. And so by having a large Bitcoin miner behind the meter as that baseload customer, they now can operate profitably. In this country, we generate 14% more energy than we use. And if you put Bitcoin mining in context, it's less energy globally than what we use to power holiday lights in this country, which is a purely voluntary thing, by the way. And when you look at the amount of capacity we can add as a buffer to the grid, we can essentially help accelerate the transition to more renewable energy.
And I just want to add to what you were saying with if there is energy waste. So for example, when the China ban came down and a lot of mining farms are looking for new places to kind of settle, there are these like really great renewable energy sources that could be used. And so for example, what we were doing to help some of our mining farm clients was, right, there's a lot of these mining farms were comfortable with using like some of the hydro in China, which is quite seasonal. But then, right, the world's second largest hydroelectric power plant is in Paraguay, and they have consistent energy and very cheap per kilowatt hour. And what was interesting with what we were seeing is that, right, Paraguay has a relationship with Brazil where kind of like Itaipu Dam, they sell half their energy to Brazil. And the half that Paraguay was using, they were only using about like 50% of that energy, and the rest was not being used. Part of it is due to some of the infrastructure that some of these substations weren't built out. But yeah, like they finally passed like this mining license. There's no gray area, and there's an opportunity for both infrastructure to be developed, have jobs be created, and then you are making use of like this electricity, this cleaner electricity than what you would have. And it's like, yeah, Paraguay is benefiting. A lot of the people in those regions are benefiting in those relationships. So
could you give me an example, a specific example of where we've seen a miner go in and work with a renewable energy producer or clean nuclear energy producer, buying the power, and then we have seen the energy producer invest actually in developing more?
I think we're in the process of doing it. I mean, we are in West Texas. We're taking 280 megawatts of a 750 megawatt site that is 20 years old. And because of grid congestion, it's very difficult for them to sell a lot of power into the grid. And so by us being a baseload customer, they're now operating at a profitable cash flow in this model. And so they can now start to expand and do things like adding solar to their wind, because wind in West Texas is primarily afternoons and nighttime. Mm-hmm. If they add solar, they can now generate electricity over a bigger portion of the day. And they can just add more data center capacity to consume that electricity. So, as I think somebody said on a panel earlier this morning, energy buyers, Bitcoin miners go where there's excess energy. And you're seeing, for example, in Kenya today, 17 gigawatts of geothermal power, and they don't have a customer for it. And they've built it, and now they're looking for customers. What we're going to see is the flip-flop, where Bitcoin miners are going to energy sources and saying, we'll help generate a financial base case for you to get financing. I'll give you an example. There's a cruise ship port that is being contemplated in Alaska. The cruise ship lines want renewable energy. They don't want to use diesel generators. This is on an island which has no consumers for electricity. So it's 8 hours a day for 4 months of the year. Nobody can build a power plant that can operate profitably for 8 hours a day, 4 months of the year only. And so it was suggested to them, look at adding Bitcoin mining, because if you set up a hydro facility, you have this energy 24/7 that you can generate. You can sell it for 8 months of the year, 24 hours a day, and the other 4 months you can sell it 16 hours a day. For Bitcoin mining, that'll fund your project, get it underwritten, so that the cruise lines can benefit from renewable energy when they have it. And that's a perfect example. In the Middle East, for example, you have energy generation asymmetry during the seasons. In the summertime in Dubai, they generate, I think it's about 4 gigawatts of power and use it for air conditioning. Well, the rest of the year, they only need 1 gigawatt. So what do they do with that excess energy? Well, you either have to charge the consumer to keep all that infrastructure going, or you find another customer to keep that infrastructure going. And I think that's what you're just starting to see now, this transition start happening.
But let's be clear about where this goes. That revenue doesn't just like happen and disappear, right? The revenue gets generated by a utility, and what does it do with that money? It doesn't just go park it and buy Bitcoin and hold Bitcoin. It reinvests in the systems that are there. So things like safety, things like reliability, things like higher uptime, things like lower cost. All of those come out of a more profitable and prosperous utility environment. So when you think about the ESG mandate, the S and the G get massively benefited by those revenues as well. The E does in addition, but this is really a multi-layered value proposition for these energy systems, because we as an industry haven't done a good enough job yet of making the case why more energy is critically important for human prospering, where more hospitals, more schools, more food availability, more high quality jobs, all of those are built on the back of low cost, high reliability energy. And so the more of that we're able to bring into communities, the more the economic opportunities that will grow in front of that. And Bitcoin mining has a direct impact on that being an available future.
Mm-hmm. And a specific example, you wanted a specific example, right? So like there's other dams in Paraguay, like Vacarai, and so IDB had put out a report saying they needed to upgrade it. There's a lot of money that needed to be put into that. And so after one of the congressmen in Paraguay, Carlos Rajala, had passed this Bitcoin mining license so that there would be no gray area, they started coming in and then having those talks too, right? If you let them build the substations into the other areas of Paraguay that do connect to the crumbling hydroelectric power plants, then it's like green lights for them. Mm-hmm. So I think some of the smaller dams can definitely benefit from that, and it's better than nothing because they don't have the money for that. Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about accounting. So we have a very wide range of estimates of how much clean energy is going into Bitcoin mining, ranging from anywhere to 20 to 60, 70%. Why is that? And why haven't we seen the industry follow government norms issued by international and national authorities?
What government norms are you referencing?
So do you think they don't exist?
No, I want to understand which one. Bitcoin mining as an industry is overwhelmingly more renewable than the vast majority of heavy industry and other high energy intensive processes. So I think on a relative basis, we're already in an incredible position to build upon.
Mm-hmm. It's an easy industry to, if you look at how the Bitcoin Mining Council does it, it's basically based on your electrical consumption, right? So, and what's the source of the energy? So how many megawatts are you consuming? What percentage of that is from, nuclear, coal, hydro, solar, et cetera? And that's how they generate their number.
But this is all self-reporting.
Yes, it's all self-reported, but a lot of the companies self-reporting are public companies and the data is being published. So, and to a certain extent, it's easy to audit, right? As a public company, our electric bills get totally reviewed by our auditors.
Yes.
And they look at every little detail of it. So I don't think there's a lack of accounting in that perspective. The SEC is going to require publicly traded Bitcoin miners to report on their energy mix as part of their ESG. Mm-hmm. So I think you're going to start seeing this becoming more and more clear. But at the end of the day, compared to a process industry where Scope 3, Scope 2 emissions are much bigger pieces of it, and you're looking at shipping stuff from all over the world and freight and all these components, the Bitcoin mining industry is very straightforward. It's look at the electric bill, look at where that energy comes from. If it's grid energy, what's the grid mix? If it's behind the meter, what's that particular power plant? It's very easy to audit.
Looking at the rest of the infrastructure that goes into building a mine.
I don't disagree, but that's so small as a percentage of the overall. If you're trying to look at the carbon footprint, mm-hmm. right? So we're talking energy mix here. That's one thing. If you look at the carbon footprint, there are less than 4 million miner rigs in the world today, right? How many cell phones are sold annually? It's billions, right? And so if you look at the e-waste as a percentage, then it's very small. If you look at the carbon required to manufacture a miner, it's very small. It's 90% of the energy, of the footprint, if you would, is an energy footprint, and that's easy to audit.
Do you report to the SEC or energy mix in an auditable way?
Not yet. Well, financially, we don't report the sources yet, but that's likely to happen as the reporting happens.
Because that's something that Senator Gillibrand brought up yesterday when she was talking about the bill that they have introduced in the Senate. And she said that when they wanted to include some kind of reporting standards for miners and perhaps the ecosystem more broadly, but they couldn't figure out how to.
Well, it's every miner pays an electric bill. Mm-hmm. Now, the percentage of miners that generate their own electricity is fairly small. Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty simple thing to just have to submit your electric bills and then to report on the content of the electricity you're purchasing. It's not a difficult thing for a miner to have to do.
Mm-hmm. Harry, do you want to talk a little bit about RECs and how that works?
Yeah, I think that the way that carbon accounting is done, certainly in the U.S. today, is really a function of of the carbon equivalence of the generation being minted at the time of the generation. So if I generate 1 megawatt hour of coal, I have one amount, there's a carbon accounting methodology for that. If I generate 1 megawatt hour of wind, I receive what's called a renewable energy credit, or a REC. And what you do with that REC is really where sort of the burden of the carbon is placed. And so, one option is, if you are a solar or a wind operator, and this is really what they do, is they generate, there's really two products that get generated with each megawatt hour. There's the megawatt hour of physical electricity that gets delivered, and there's the renewable energy credit that gets generated as part of that megawatt hour as well. And so there's an enormous liquid market for renewable energy credits for those looking to offset their footprint can voluntarily opt into one of those markets. Maybe if they're working with a generator, they can have those renewable energy credits never hit a liquid market in order to make an attestation that they are carbon neutral. But this is kind of a fraught process at this stage, where there's a wide range of different types of RECs that carry different sort of qualities to them. There's a lack of standardization and transparency and clarity around this. I think that the approach that I've thought a lot about is really, how do you just do this on a generation type go forward basis, rather than trying to engage in like the accounting game of it all. So what does that mean? Call up my local hydro dam and try to sign a deal. Call up my local nuke and try to sign a deal. Engage with high uptime, low environmental impact energy sources first and foremost, and try to kind of cut the accounting game off before it even starts. So, when you think about the different methodologies that are out there, and this is my challenge to everybody who's engaged with this conversation in any way, shape, or form. If you think that environmentalists and anti-nuclear advocates are on the same side, you're wrong. There is no way forward from a high uptime, base load, cost-effective energy footprint without engaging in nuclear generation directly.
Mm-hmm.
Eliza, I just want to also add and complement what Harry was saying, is that yes, maybe not all of the entire industry will switch to like these renewable energy sources, but I think there's also a really good opportunity for us to also do more. So right, you're talking about RECs. There's also like carbon credits, and we've seen a lot of like these carbon credits come on chain and get tokenized and give a lot of these carbon projects and these originators an opportunity to have a lot more money that they can put and then invest into planting more trees or supporting some of these other natural like energy sources. But like when we were talking, I think earlier this week, is that there's this right incentivization for this type of good behavior that can happen. So maybe like when I was like mining back in like 2013, 14, like I was doing it for ideological reasons. But now it's right when you get to scale, it's profit maximization. But it's not like maybe you can maximize your profits and you can also care about these ideologies of like decentralization, self-sovereignty, immutability, et cetera. But right, built into the consensus mechanism of even Bitcoin, right? They follow the system because the tokens, the Bitcoin that is generated is valuable to someone else. And so they don't even need to care about this sort of the ideology, right? If they can make the money and then that works, that's the system. So that in the case where you can have this, you can define good behavior as, let's say, carbon offsetting or switching to renewables, then you can also need to incentivize that. And we've been seeing a lot of that, right? These complementary chains, let's say, that support Bitcoin. We have wrapped Bitcoin like floating around Ethereum and other chains. Then, right, if you can find a way to have like carbon offsets be attached to Bitcoin, right? These Bitcoins now can be green. And in some of these conversations that we've had, there's like sovereign wealth funds out there that have like ESG criteria goals that they want to satisfy. They do also want to participate in like hedging their bets on this sort of like new financial system in Bitcoin. And they're like, oh, we can't like have this Bitcoin because everyone's going to like hate us because, oh, Bitcoin is dirty. Offset it, go carbon negative where you offset more than you have. You have like Bitcoin that's been green. Maybe you can attribute it to a mining farm somewhere in Norway that has clean energy, right? Maybe not all the Bitcoin in the world will be green like that. You can offset it with tokenized carbon credits. And then you can have this sort of like flywheel of incentivized good behavior, right?
I mean, I would say there's a lot of work to be done with carbon credits in general, but so would you say overall that we need to work more on the incentives for the industry?
Well, I think, so you have different methodologies right now. So for one thing, carbon credits, that you have a quality and vintage issue with them, right? So carbon credits aren't the best model because there's a lot of bad carbon credits out there that really aren't doing any good. RECs are different because a REC typically is renewable energy was generated. If you have to consume that REC within a year. There are guidelines. It's very structured. But when it comes to Bitcoin, so there's been a lot of arguments. Do you look at the carbon or the energy cost to generate a Bitcoin? Well, the problem is there are only 2 million Bitcoin left to be mined. What about all the old Bitcoin? That would mean one Bitcoin has a lower footprint than an old Bitcoin would have a lower footprint than a new Bitcoin possibly. You have look at the energy cost per transaction. What does it cost to run the Bitcoin network and divide it by the number of transactions? That doesn't really do a good deal of explanation because if you're holding your Bitcoin, you're actually consuming carbon, if you think about it. So Professor Troy Cross came up with this concept of the maintenance cost of Bitcoin, which I think is very viable, where you essentially say that if you look at the Bitcoin that you hold, what percentage of all the Bitcoin out there is that, and what percentage does that represent of the energy consumed annually to maintain the Bitcoin blockchain? And then you offset that by buying essentially hash rate futures on only green energy produced Bitcoin. And so in that way, you're actually incentivizing Bitcoin miners who only use renewable energy because they're the only ones who can sell you those hash rate futures.
So we have 3 minutes and 20 seconds left. So I want to ask each and every one of you, what do you think we're doing, the industry is doing wrong? Like, what do you think needs to be done for what keeps you up at night, let's say, on this topic? Fred, you seem ready to go.
What keeps me up at night? I think there are lots of things that keep us up at night. Price of Bitcoin, global hash rate growth, price of miners, capital markets, et cetera. But what I think the key thing today is, and I've been speaking about this for about a year, the energy companies are coming into this industry. The energy companies are going to start investing in, they already are, investing in data center projects that are housing Bitcoin, AI processing, machine learning processors, all these types of compute load which are interruptible. They view it as a perfectly sane way for them to underwrite more energy capacity. So the renewable energy guys are going to build out large data center projects. They're investing in them. They want Bitcoin miners as customers. We think there's a lot that can be done to accelerate that. And it's the regulatory issue. I think if we got clarity on the regulation regarding crypto at the federal level and through this White House executive order, whether it's the Lummis-Gillibrand bill, whatever it may be, we just need regulatory clarity. And then very conservative industries like the energy industry would be willing to double down and invest.
Okay, Harry, you have less time now because Fred's...
Sorry. It's okay. What keeps me up at night is that I'm not doing enough for Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a fundamental human transformation technology. It's going to bring prosperity broadly to populations that have not had access to this type of prosperity before. And so what keeps me up at night is that I'm not doing enough.
If only you had a time turner.
I think it's education and information. I think we were talking also, right? Like there's so much misinformation. Maybe we've been cast in a bad light and just like the public runs with it. When in reality, like what Harry was saying earlier, right, there's many more industries that do have much more responsibility that they need to take when it comes to energy consumption and the perpetuation of these types of energy uses. But I mean, that's what we have to live with. And it just keep telling people, educating people, clarifying, and then maybe they'll hopefully understand.
Right. Example, state of New York, fossil fuel. Only Bitcoin miners are taken as an industry that can't re-energize fossil fuel plants. Why not just anybody? Why specifically pick Bitcoin miners?
I think that's a great question to end this panel with. Thank you guys for joining us, and thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you.